Welcome to GRE. I'm your host, Keith Weinhold. As America deals with the housing supply crisis today, one inexpensive way to cope with the shortage is to try to build inexpensively with shipping containers. We look at a case study with an American real estate leader in their shipping container apartment project and more today on Get Rich Education. A lot of investors choose either cash flow or home price appreciation, but one real estate market could provide both. Jacksonville, Florida, with 27% lower home prices than the national median and 1% higher rents, their market has appreciated 34% more than other comparable cash flow markets over the last 30 years. Get positive cash flow today and appreciation for tomorrow. They often have available inventory in Jacksonville. Start at cashflowandgrowth.com. Hey, is your IRA in a real estate syndication? Yikes, a 37% UBIT tax could hit you, but you still have a chance to set up your EQRP and avoid this. Did you make too much money in 2020 and need more deductions? Now federal law lets you set up an EQRP in 2021 and get deductions for last year, retroactively. Even put old IRA and 401k money in Bitcoin, gold, or your own business. Get control of all of your retirement money, tax and penalty free. Text EQRP in all capital letters to 72,000.
You're listening to the show that has created more financial freedom than nearly any show in the world. This is Get Rich Education.
Welcome to GRE, from Saratoga, California to Saratoga Springs, New York, and across 188 nations worldwide. I'm Keith Weinhold. This is Get Rich Education, as we talk about innovative ways to tackle this chronic shortage of housing supply in America today. This is part 2 of 3 in this, interstitially released housing supply crisis series. 2 weeks ago, we had part 1 of 3. That's when we discussed conventionally built homes. That happened to be in Colorado. This week, it's shipping container homes in a different part of the nation. Then in 2 weeks, we'll check back and see what progress has been made with 3D printed homes. We just couldn't release 3 shows in a row on this kind of construction-related theme because there's too much going on in the economy and housing market to tell you about on other shows, hence this interstitial staggering. We're talking with an American leader today in providing housing. They're also one of GRE's top turnkey providers for investors like you, so we'll get an update on if they have inventory there by the end of the show today. We'll also talk about what a vertically integrated real estate provider does before we discuss the shipping containers. And I will fully describe a shipping container to you shortly, but we're talking about those 8-foot wide by 8.5-foot tall 20 or 40 foot long rectangular shaped structures that you often see on a barge or stacked up at a port, and they're used in international freight. That's what a shipping container is, and they're pretty widely available, and they're relatively cheap, usually under $5,000 each. So therefore, the promise of building with these shipping containers, and they really don't, though, provide enough footage for anything more than an efficiency apartment. And then you've got to substantially modify it to make it livable because you need things in there like electricity and running water and windows. So these used shipping containers, they have been converted for use in housing around the world and as retail and office spaces here and there. There's a prominent student housing project in Le Havre, France. There is a container village in Amsterdam. There is the food and retail box park in London. There is a bazaar in Kyrgyzstan made from these things. In some parts of the world, shipping containers were used as temporary clinics in the pandemic, and there are some problems with recycling shipping containers, like some environmental issues in the way that they've been treated and the structural weakness in them if too much steel is cut out of the containers to make way for those utilities. Let's learn about using shipping containers to grapple with today's housing supply crisis and more. This week's guest is a founding partner of JWB Real Estate Companies, and they serve over 1,000 clients across 43 states and 13 nations. They have purchased and renovated thousands of investment properties, more than 3,000 currently under management, and pretty soon I'm going to have to say that they've got 4,000 because they've almost hit 4,000 units under management. So he's a great person to talk to for getting the temperature of the market. An 8-time honoree of Inc.'s fastest growing companies in the U.S. They've been featured in the Wall Street Journal and New York Times, and they've really been outstanding about giving back to their own community, which is their home base in Jacksonville, Florida. Welcome back to GRE, Gregg Cohen.
Thank you, Keith. So great to be back with you, brother.
You are a vertically integrated company. Besides only doing the turnkey investments, you do more than that. What do you tell people that a vertically integrated company is?
A vertically integrated company is very different than a turnkey property provider, but most investors think that they're one and the same. And if you're investing for a full market cycle, you want to pay special attention to the differences because these will likely result in significant risk mitigation and potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars in additional returns on investment, depending on your strategy for investing. We can first start with defining what a turnkey company is.
Yeah.
A turnkey company sells you a rental property. Some of those turnkey companies actually own the assets that they sell, and some of them act as a broker, which connect the buyer and the seller. Some of the turnkey companies also do property management in-house, but most outsource the property management. And many turnkey companies typically operate in multiple real estate markets, especially now because they're in search of inventory. And they operate with the idea of going a mile wide rather than a mile deep in one market.
Now, the strict definition of a vertically integrated company, which, Gregg, you and I could just use the acronym VI, is it's the combination in one company of two or more stages of production that's normally operated by separate companies.
Exactly. You've got multiple companies under one roof that are working to make this investment, in this case, to make this a better risk-adjusted return on investment. And a vertically integrated company, and I love the acronym VI, we say it all the time now. So a VI investment company really has a much higher threshold to attain to. A vertically integrated company actually buys the properties. They actually own the assets. They actually build or renovate the properties in-house, and they do the property management in-house. With the strict definition that we were just talking about, there's those multiple companies that actually work together for a synergistic effect and better overall product. But that's really where a vertically integrated company stops being similar to a turnkey company. A vertically integrated company does those things that I just mentioned, but it is committed to one real estate market. A vertically integrated company are players in the social, political, economic initiatives in their market. They invest their own money to be able to build out the runway of assets for their clients. They invest their own money in other investments that might not be turnkey properties. We invest in our downtown because we believe this is going to have a dramatic effect on the economy here, which is going to raise rents and raise property values for all of the turnkey properties that our clients own in the surrounding areas. And we also invest deeply in the community. We go many steps farther beyond. And why do we do that? Well, a growing and better community, we just feel we have a moral and ethical responsibility to be able to do that with our platform. But beyond that, when you're improving neighborhoods, when you're making a difference in people's lives, obviously that improves the overall living situation, that improves long-term, that improves median incomes. And median incomes rising in your neighborhood are what are necessary for you to continue to earn the best risk-adjusted return on investment in the long run.
Now, a number of the providers that we talk to here on the show, they do own the asset that they sell to that investor. You do that, and you even go beyond it. Talking about a VI company, you're investing deeply in that community in Jacksonville, which is in Northeast Florida. I see you and your company doing all sorts of interesting things that I don't often see other turnkey companies do. For example, buying and restoring a commercial building downtown in the historic district, or revitalizing this this old bank and converting its use type and bringing it back to life. So we're really talking about putting your money where your mouth is, investing in that community. And interestingly, what that sort of thing does is it brings more economic activity and prosperity to that region, which helps rents in that area over the long term rise. A lot of this has to do with, for example, you are highly involved in Jacksonville's downtown preservation and revitalization program. So tell us more about that.
The reason why we take a significant amount of our own personal assets that we have here and invest it in downtown Jacksonville is because we're thinking about problems that our clients may face well beyond the 1 year, 3 year, or 5 year threshold. We're thinking of 10 to 20 year problems, and we want to be a major part of that solution. Right now, JWB has inventory for clients. It's a wonderful time for investors to be investing in rental properties. And it's a wonderful time to be JWB because we plan far in advance to be able to have inventory for clients. But one of the things that we need to be thinking about as a great steward of our clients' money over the next 10 to 20 years are how are we going to continue to produce the best returns on investment? In order to do that, you have to be able to show that home values are going to go up along with median incomes. Because, at some point, if home values go up so much and the homes are no longer affordable, well, home values won't go up anymore. I'm here because I want to be able to produce the best risk-adjusted returns over the next full market cycle for our clients. And so one of the best ways that we have determined we can do that is by being a major influence in our downtown in Jacksonville here. So you mentioned a couple of projects that we have taken on. Just over the last 18 months, JWB has purchased 5 downtown buildings here in Jacksonville. And the reason is because we can have a real positive effect on median incomes rising over the next 10 to 20 years. We can be a part of a downtown here in Jacksonville that is already growing. And when you surround downtown where we have about 6,500 residents right now, if we can get that number up to about 10,000 residents, that's the magic number where you start to see bars, restaurants, amenities, other fun things start to happen. Other developers then start to come in, and this flywheel of development really happens in downtown. And when that happens, that attracts top talent, that attracts millennials wanting to move downtown, and other high income earners want to move downtown and be here in Jacksonville. And that attracts jobs. And so it's this wonderful, incredible flywheel that we feel like we have the ability to have an influence on. And that's why you've seen JWB strategically make an impact in downtown Jacksonville. And ultimately, this is going to benefit all of our clients who, of course, are investing for the long haul here in Jacksonville. And they want their rents and they want their property values to go up. So this is something that we can do as a vertically integrated company.
When you, as a real estate investor, buy a property for a long-term rental, you're not just investing in that property, you're investing in the neighborhood and in that community, and with the reasonable expectation that a tenant will be there that can pay the rent, and your property value is generally going to appreciate. But you yourself, as an investor, you can't really control the direction of the neighborhood itself. But with a VI company like this, you're really helping change the trajectory of the neighborhood. So do you have any examples of where you've purchased a property, maybe even a commercial property, Gregg, in proximity to some of the turnkey properties that you offer, and how that's helped with valuations and revitalization of the area?
Well, I absolutely have a lot of examples. We've been doing this for 15 years now, and there are core neighborhoods that we operate in. There's 4 core neighborhoods that we operate here in Jacksonville. Because we only operate in these 4 neighborhoods, you can imagine thousands and thousands of properties over 15 years that have been taken, the worst properties on the block or vacant lots on the block, and turned them into brand new construction rental homes. It's had a significant impact on the community. It's raised the tax base for the city. And of course, it's created a lot of passive income for our clients. I'm thinking of one specifically, which is probably a good combination of what we've done as your quote unquote turnkey provider, as well as what we've done mixing in some of the strategic commercial acquisitions that we've made. And I'll show you how this all comes together. This was really kind of the ground zero of the build to rent phenomenon. Back in 2011, JWB was really a pioneer in this space where we started to acquire maybe about 50 or 60 lots in a neighborhood called Arlington in Jacksonville.
And you were some of the first people in the nation to do new construction turnkey properties 10 years ago.
Exactly. That's why they featured us on the front page of the Wall Street Journal, which again, our business, this was about 10 years ago. So 5 years into business, that was a really cool accomplishment. We were really excited to be recognized as a pioneer in that space. And it just made sense at that time. We were able to acquire land. We were able to then build the house and be into the house for roughly the same cost as if it was a renovated property. And we said, wow, what a better opportunity for our residents, a better opportunity for our clients long-term to decrease maintenance and vacancy costs. And there was a lot of land and a lot of mobile homes in this area. And we said, wow, we can really change the face of this neighborhood. That was ground zero for new construction, build to rent. And since then, we have continued to build out that neighborhood. We probably have 200, 300 homes just in that neighborhood that we have built out. And you've seen market values rise. Well, the really cool thing is that in addition to having that specific impact on that neighborhood, there's also this commercial project that we saw, which is really kind of your link between downtown Jacksonville and this Arlington neighborhood. And it's called the College Park Shopping Center. It was originally the Town and Country Shopping Center. JWB acquired it about a year ago, and it was in a dilapidated state. But this is that landmark shopping center that really is the face for the Arlington neighborhood facing downtown. And so we're thinking 10 to 20 years out here. We want to make sure that this neighborhood is done right. And we saw this project and we said, we need to make sure that this is done exactly the right way. There's only one piece of real estate that's the gateway into downtown coming from Arlington. We knew we needed to do it the right way. We're currently in the process right now of renovating that property. Part of that process is working with city leaders to be able to tap in some incentive dollars that go to projects like this. Our plans are to completely renovate the existing space, work with our current tenants that are there, add a grocery store, which is a really important tenant to have in a space like this. We're then going to build 2 apartment complexes on the space to be able to bring a mixed use component to this. And we're going to add a food court, which is built out of shipping containers. We have a huge mural painted on the side so you can see as you're driving down the Arlington Expressway. And I've been able to work in the art aspect of this, which our community loves. And so this is that type of project that your normal turnkey provider is simply not going to be a part of, because it's hard enough to solve the problems that are here today, let alone the ones that are here for 10 to 20 years. But the reason that we're able to do this is because, with our team here of over 85 people, there's a part of our company here that is dedicated to the long term. It's dedicated to what is coming next. And that's really why we're able to be successful. This vertically integrated model requires resources. We thought long ago about how we can figure out how to be that vertically integrated model. How can we solve problems that are beyond just the here and now?
I often talk about how the market is more important than the property. One can say that the neighborhood is more important than the property too. And Andrea, that runs operations here at GRE, was just visiting Gregg and his operations in Jacksonville last week. I visited there with Gregg a few years ago, and you can really feel the culture there. As it says on a lot of their literature, they are a real estate company with a soul. You're listening to Get Rich Education. We're talking with Gregg Cohen. We're going to come back and talk more about their shipping container project as we talk about tackling the housing supply crisis in America. Today, I'm your host, Keith Weinhold. The people that our listeners can't stop talking about are Ridge Lending Group and MLS 42056. They provided you with more loans than anyone. It's where I got my last few loans, and they finance single-family income property up to fourplexes. They're the #1 lender for both beginners and veterans. Start your pre-qualification, chat with President Chaley Ridge personally, and you'll end up with your custom plan for expanding your cash flowing portfolio. Start at ridgelendinggroup.com. Starting in real estate seems hard for some. Even experienced investors can find it difficult to achieve the success that they had hoped for. What if there was one small change everyone could make that would solve these challenges? Allie Boone offers a book that really no one else has. It's an easy-to-understand glimpse into the real estate investing industry and your mindset. It's life lessons on hacking your mind before you hack your wallet. Her book to grab on Amazon is called Not Your How-To Guide to Real Estate Investing.
This is Rich Dad Advisor Garrett Sutton. To grow your wealth, listen to the always valuable Get Rich Education.
You're back inside Get Rich Education, that real estate investing show where you learn why financially free beats debt free. We're talking with Gregg Cohen in Jacksonville, Florida. They do so many things there as a vertically integrated company. And one thing that they've had some both success with and learnings from in dealing with tackling this national housing supply crisis that we're in is building with shipping containers. And maybe some people don't know what shipping containers are. I think of it as a large reusable box, really. It's made of fiberboard or steel, and it's shaped like a rectangle. What do you tell people that shipping containers are, Gregg, when they ask about what you're doing there?
What we've done here in Jacksonville is we've created the first apartment built entirely out of shipping containers here in Jacksonville. We believe it's the first one in the US that was built modularly, which means it was built in a warehouse, was our original idea of doing this.
Built modularly, meaning built off-site rather than on-site.
Exactly. That was the intention. And the reason that we did this, now, again, you got to keep in mind here, we're a vertically integrated company, but we focus on our turnkey rental property investments. We are not a company that does a whole lot of different things, and we don't have a whole lot of other revenue streams. Right? We want to keep solely focused on being the best that we can at turnkey rental properties. So you may be wondering, Gregg, why are we talking about you doing a shipping container project? Well, the idea here is that if we're going to be the best steward of your money, and we're thinking about problems that are coming in 10 to 20 years, we've got a real affordable housing crisis in the country. And we don't have an affordable housing crisis in Jacksonville, but we know that over time, as property values go up, median incomes have not risen to the level that would need to support that in the future. And we all, as rental property investors, we could be in a situation where your risk-adjusted returns sort of have a cap on them. Because if incomes don't go up or building costs don't go down, there's going to be a challenge for people to get into affordable housing. So we looked at this and we said, you know what? I wonder if we can build an apartment complex out of shipping containers. I wonder if we can decrease our cost for construction to a place where we can create more inventory for clients that could be positively cash flowing, obviously do a lot of great things for the environment. The other thing that we looked at is we know that downtown Jacksonville right now could use some more density. And so we said, well, if we could build a shipping container apartment, it's on a normal size lot where you would usually just put one single family home. If we can make this work, then this would be a great thing for downtown Jacksonville as well, as we're on our goal to get to 10,000 residents and to bring 18 units on one individual lot. We're going to go out there and we're going to try to be slightly innovative on some things that might solve problems that are, as I mentioned, 10 to 20 years away. And for us, shipping containers was that great venture to try to do that.
And for those that still can't see a shipping container in their mind's eye, when we talk about a large reusable box, oftentimes it is corrugated, meaning that it has vertical ridges on the side of them. Shipping containers are also known as ocean containers. Sometimes you'll hear people call them connexes. And a shipping container costs somewhere between $2,000 and $5,000. That's just for the container itself. That's not to make it livable, which we'll touch on. And oftentimes these shipping containers are transported on their side, so that if you walked into one, usually they have these double doors on the end, it's 8.5 feet high, 8 feet wide, and then they typically come in a 20-foot length or a 40-foot length. And a freight container, which these things are interchangeably known as, they're really designed to be moved from one mode of transportation to another without having to load and unload it. So that's why you see a lot of these shipping containers in international trade, and therefore they're made so you can move it from a ship to a truck and put it over a highway, or you can move it from a ship onto a train and move it over rails. And these things are pretty strong. I've read that they can be stacked 8 high. Sometimes you'll see these things stacked on a barge or in the port area of a city. So that's what shipping containers are. Gregg talks about the project with these. Maybe you're just thinking of these big boxy things that would look really ugly and unattractive, but these things can look not so bad with landscaping. The one project there, Gregg, it might be the same one that you touched on, is shaped such that if you had a plan view or a bird's eye view, if you were looking down at it from overhead, it's sort of horseshoe shaped with the way that they configure these shipping containers. And there's pretty nice landscaping around it, and they really look somewhat attractive.
They really do. Everybody that goes through and sees this unit, the shipping container apartment, they're just blown away. It is just a marvel of engineering and design because, as you mentioned, these are really small units. They're 320 square feet. That's a studio apartment pretty much, and a small one at that. Well, you're able to fit in all the amenities that you would need, your appliances, your dishwasher, your couch, and your, enough room for your TV. And you got your sink and all of this good stuff. It's just been designed in a way that for somebody who does not need a lot of space and wants to live in a downtown environment, it blows my mind how well it came out, to be quite honest.
Yes. So you mentioned 320 square feet. That makes sense with the dimensions I brought up. That would be 8 feet by 40 feet. So therefore, a really long and thin footprint there for one's home. What about zoning? Are there any particular zoning issues with that? Because to some people, they don't look attractive and it brings more density into an area. So did you run into any NIMBYism, any not in my backyard-ism problems? Were there any zoning constraints?
Our first shipping container project was in downtown Jacksonville. It was in an area that has a lot of commercial as well. So it was not so much of a shock to the core neighborhood that you would have a shipping container apartment. Now, technically, you could do this in an established neighborhood in Jacksonville. There's not any rules or laws that would prevent you from doing this. However, I think you may find more NIMBYism if you were the lone shipping container in a neighborhood that had all single family homes. We didn't go down that path right now, and I wouldn't even go down that path in the future, even knowing that you probably could, just because I think you would cause a lot of waves out there and it's just not really necessary to do that. But for us, we had a wonderful experience working with the city. The city of Jacksonville was super easy to deal with on permitting. They actually developed an entirely new workflow to inspect and permit the units for us. They were really excited about this project, and it's just been in the news over and over and over again as a big win for downtown Jacksonville. So we didn't see any NIMBYism issues, and mainly that's because of where we thought to put the units.
What you're doing is in the news because it sure came across my radar with your shipping container project. I haven't told you before, Gregg, I actually spent a fair bit of my life on a shipping container when I was doing construction materials testing on one of the 8-foot by 20-foot connexes. So having spent time in one of those, I know that before it was usable, a contractor had to make some cuts in the sidewall and add some windows and some ventilation and some heating. So what about the livability of these shipping containers? Because I know, much like me, our mission here at Get Rich Education is to provide housing that's clean, safe, affordable, and functional. So how practical is it, and how much expense really is added to add what contractors would call penetrations, basically where you have to poke holes in the side of these shipping containers and add things like utilities and windows and insulation and cooling there in Florida. So just talk to us some more about taking this shipping container and converting it into something that's livable.
Well, I'm going to give you two sides of the coin. My answer is going to be on both sides of the fence here. So as far as livability, these units are really wonderful. I just toured them the other day. In fact, we lead tours downtown of other leaders for the city and in politics and just influential people in Jacksonville. We take them on a tour of downtown Jacksonville to show our projects along with other projects. And so I was just on one of those tours we were hosting and just walked into the units. And I mean, everybody has a really big smile on their face when they walk in this unit and they say, wow, I never thought 320 square feet would actually be livable. Yeah. Right. And we have residents that are signing 1-year leases, even longer than that, to be able to live in this home. So it is definitely livable. It's really a marvel of engineering, as I mentioned, that it is as livable as it is, knowing that it's 320 square feet. So that's the positive side of it. You want to hear the negative side of it, Keith?
Sure. There's usually a downside. There's a reason why not everyone in the United States is building with shipping containers.
Yeah. And the costs to put this project together are quite astounding. You know, we went into this as that provider who is trying to solve that affordable housing issue, to come up with another way to construct, to another way to build housing at a much more affordable rate. And we just flat out blew the budget on this one by a lot, Keith. So when you mentioned all those things that you have to do to make sure that you figure out how to engineer so that you have your fire safety, that you can make sure that you have your AC unit the way you need to be. I mean, in a single family house, these things are engineered with such precision. And, you know, you might have 1,200 or 1,800 square feet heated and cooled to be able to figure those things out. Your margin of error in a shipping container is just razor thin. And so where we really learned a lot and went way over budget is in the design, the engineering, the architecture. Now, you would imagine those things would have happened and been a lot more cost intensive on the first one. We knew that going in. We didn't expect to blow the budget like we did, but we did. Sometimes as an innovator, that's what you're going to do. And so our original budget for constructing this shipping container apartment, we estimated was going to be about $1.3 million. It ended up coming in at about $2 million. Now, for us, this is not something we sell to clients. This is part of how we feel we are going to be the best risk-adjusted returns provider for our clients, is because we're going to try and do things like this using our own dime before we would ever offer anything like this to a client. So the fact that it came in over budget is JWB's burden to bear, but we're in it for the long haul. This is, again, a project that we own, used our own money, and we're buying and holding for a very long time because we believe in downtown Jacksonville. If we just looked over the fact that we went over budget by over $700,000, this would be an absolute win across the board, Keith.
Except for that, the loss in businesses do kind of need cash flow and income to stay in business. So to get an idea for the scope of that, you told us about the $2 million project cost. And I believe you said it was for 18 units, right? So therefore, maybe a little over $110K, $120K per shipping container unit. Yeah, quite a bit. Really appreciate you talking about a loss then. So as we talk about how to address the affordable housing supply crisis in the United States, we look at some of these different construction methods beyond just the on-site construction methods. And we're looking here this week at shipping containers. In a couple of weeks, we're going to look at 3D printing. I try to remind people that there's a reason that most properties are still built on site, because no matter how you build, you're still going to have a cost of labor. You're still going to have a cost of materials. And then there's still going to be the cost of land to put whatever you construct on top. Do you see yourself doing any more of these shipping container projects now that you've had some substantial learnings and just where they might work?
Well, I think it's really important, as I mentioned, to be trying things that are going to solve big problems. So overall, we look at this as a big win. In our history as a company, we have taken certain shots like this, one of those being new construction, and it's worked out famously for our clients. And then by definition, you're not going to hit on every single one of those. And so for the shipping containers here, this was a huge learning lesson, and one that we're really proud that we were able to build, and it looks wonderful. We're just committed to that process of innovation, of taking strategic opportunities to be able to solve big problems. So we're proud of that fact. I do think that you will see more shipping container projects across the country in the future, although you're not going to see JWB doing other shipping container apartments here. While we're confident that we could bring the cost down, we don't feel like we could bring the cost down enough that it would make sense compared to what we could build housing using wood frame for us, which is our typical way of building houses. So it's 20 to 30% more to do the shipping container housing in our estimation versus what we could spend on using just normal frame construction. So you're not going to see us doing a whole lot more here for housing specifically in Jacksonville at the moment. The numbers just don't make sense, and we couldn't get the cost down as far as we wanted. However, in other parts of the country, the numbers can work. In other places where costs are a lot higher, you may see that there might be other shipping container apartments that are built, because there are so many great effects, of course, on the environment, and as for density in certain areas. There's a certain cool factor that people love being a part of something like this, which we're seeing with the demand to rent the units for ourselves.
Yeah, well, that's an interesting roundup on shipping container construction, how to do it, and how to make them livable. If we zoom out for a moment, Gregg, and we do talk about your regular wood frame construction, more of these conventionally built homes, and the turnkey properties that you offer most people. Turnkey means you as an investor get to buy a property that's already renovated or newly built, new construction turnkey in JWB's case, and you get the property already tenanted and already under management. With your turnkey, since you have nearly 4,000 properties now under management there, Gregg, tell us about some of your learnings, because I know you closely track the rent payment and the percent of on-time payments that you get. Tell us about that now that we think the pandemic's winding down.
I remember when the pandemic broke, I just made sure that I was in front of our clients as often as I could. As the world seemed to be falling apart and was turned upside down, people were really scared about how their assets were going to perform across all the asset classes. And the same questions were there for rental property investing. What's going to happen if there's an eviction moratorium and my residents don't pay rent? What's going to happen to my assets? The premise that we had here internally was that this asset class was built to be so much better suited than your other asset classes, which were going to be a lot more volatile and probably a lot more hit by the negative effects of the COVID economy. When you looked at how the government stepped in and provided a lot of stimulus, they did that because then the government has an incentive to make sure that housing is stable. And, that was part of the reasoning that we felt that this asset class was going to perform very consistently. And that was the message that we gave to our clients early on, especially in March of 2020, when there weren't a whole lot of answers for many people.
No nation wants to see residents kicked out of their homes, whether they're a homeowner or a renter. No politician wants to see that happen.
Absolutely. And that should give you a lot of confidence. When you're investing in an asset that is a critical need, you have a lot going for you in the face of uncertainty. And that's one of the reasons that I absolutely love rental property investing and have done this now for over 15 years. That was our premise. And over the last year, we've had the benefit of, as you mentioned, managing almost 4,000 homes in a truly unpredictable time, throwing curveballs that we never expected. And we, of course, are just maniacs when it comes to tracking and reporting on our data. And I have some incredible data to support that premise, which is that this asset class was better suited and has performed so much better as far as a consistency perspective than other asset classes. So just to give it kind of some perspective, Keith, a normal month for JWB would have us collecting about 98.5% of rent. That is normal in non-pandemic times. So that was always our threshold to compare to. During the first few months of the pandemic, we were somewhere around about 97% rent collection. And we didn't go any farther than that, any farther lower than that. And to be quite honest, that even surprised myself. It's a big credit to our team overcoming challenges with our residents, helping them see that the idea of not paying rent was not a long-term solution for them. We want to keep them in their homes. And a credit to the relationship that we have with our residents, who many were going through some tough times. The floor for us was really about 97%, which is incredible. As you look at the year overall, 2020, we collected 98% as we started to come back out of the recession and out of the gripping effects of the pandemic.
That's remarkable.
Rent collection continued to go up. So really in the COVID year, we collected 98% of rents, which is just about 0.5% off of what a normal year is here at JWB Property Management.
Congratulations. That says a lot about what you're doing. And you as an investor, that says a lot about the asset class that you're investing in. This isn't Dogecoin or Beanie Babies. This is primordial to human need. This is shelter that we're talking about here. Gregg, interestingly, with what's happened during these times is you offer a product overall that's in such demand. We're talking about the increased demand for people to move out of apartments and live in detached single family homes, which is a lot of what you do there. They're often new construction, and they're in Florida, an in-migration hotbed. And the interesting thing is, and this may be incomprehensible to some people, but you essentially always have available inventory. So tell us about those turnkey properties and that inventory.
Well, again, I'm going to go back to why it's critical to work with a vertically integrated company. If all we could do today to source enough inventory to satisfy demand for our clients was go to the multiple listing service or go to our real estate professional network and try to buy existing inventory, there is no way we could keep up. The market right now is so hot. People want to buy turnkey rental properties that demand would far outstrip any supply that we could get to. And if you're investing in turnkey rental properties or you're trying to, this is probably what you're seeing across the country. You want to buy, you go to a turnkey provider and they say, we would love to do business with you, but we don't have the inventory for you. So we're going to put you on a waiting list. Luckily, and the reason why this vertically integrated approach, I think, is the best risk adjusted way to produce returns, but also produce opportunities for clients is, over 10 years ago, we started to understand that there would be a time like this in the market where supply would be very, very limited. If you looked back at what happened at the Great Recession, building basically stopped and we underbuilt for our nation for almost a decade now.
Yeah, back starting about 12 years ago, right?
Exactly. So in our minds, we said, well, at some point, even this was back in 2011, when nobody was bullish on real estate in 2011, right? Other than probably you and I, Keith. We started to buy as many lots as we could. We arranged all of our resources so that we could have this runway of inventory. We sat on a lot of those lots, right? We might have only sold 200 or 300 houses back then, but we bought 700. The next year we bought 700, 800 lots, and we only sold 300. And we kept stacking these lots in our inventory. And we did it for a day like today. And today, the vast majority of our inventory is these lots that we have been owning for, let's call it 5, 8 years, maybe a decade now, that we are now building out to satisfy the demand for you as a turnkey client out there. And there's just no other way that a turnkey provider can create enough inventory other than they need to own the asset. They really need to be thinking many years ahead, solving 10 to 20 year problems to be able to create that runway. And that's why for clients that are interested in investing with JWB, you can call us right now. We can have a few conversations with you and have you select inventory right here, right now. And I really don't know of more than maybe one or two other providers across the country that can say that at this moment.
You had great foresight to buy when a lot of people didn't have the confidence to buy like you did. You continue to build faith in the community there, and you continue to build good equity there. Gregg, before you go, I know you have a very long lease duration there with your tenancies, which is one of the things that helps make your company more profitable for real estate investors. Oftentimes they sign 2 to 3 year leases and then they might stay longer than that. So tell us about that, and then tell us about the price points.
You bring up long lease terms. I think this is really critical. And if you try to separate maybe different strategies on how to invest in rental properties and be successful over the long run, many people don't spend enough time demanding long-term leases, either from themselves when they're renting out their properties or more notably from their property management companies that they work with. Quite frankly, it's very clear to me, and I'm sure, Keith, you'd say the same thing, that there's a direct correlation between how long your resident stays and how your returns on investment will be more successful over time. When you have short-term resident stays and turnover, you have more maintenance and vacancy costs and your returns go down. Would you agree, Keith?
100%. That's the biggest killer.
It just never made sense to me why property management companies were built on this idea of only signing 1-year leases. And so as you start to pull some of the layers back about why that actually happens, you get to a point where you understand that a property management company's best dollar per hour activity is actually filling a new resident in your home, which is against the best activity for you as a rental property investor. When they fill a home with a new resident, they get a tenant placement fee, which many times is equal to first full month's rent. And then if you compare that to their other dollar per hour activities, they usually don't stack up. So at the core of it, if you're going to ask a property management company to sign long-term leases, you're in effect asking them to decrease their main revenue source by a lot. And oh, by the way, it's harder to sign a 2 or a 3 year lease with a resident than a 1-year lease. So you're asking them to work twice as hard as well. It's a real shame because property management companies have such an influence, either positively or negative, on the rental property experience for a client. And there's a lot of folks that get into this. They see the numbers, they see the vision for rental properties. And then 2, 3, or 5 years later, they've got a rental property portfolio and they're just not excited about it. And many times it's because maintenance costs and vacancy costs have worn on them because there's more tenant turnover. And you probably could have predicted it when you started to go back and see how incentives work with property management companies. And of course, if you only sign a 1-year lease and you want to have a long-term resident stay every year, you're just hoping and praying that they renew. And I don't really like to make my business decisions on hopes and prayers. We sign 2 and 3 year leases. 70% of our residents renew. And this equates to a 4.5 year on average resident stay. And when you get long-term resident stays over 4 years, that's where you can really beat your return on investment expectations.
That's astounding. Tell us about the prices and what's available.
Yeah, so your typical brand new construction homes will have a purchase price somewhere between about $180,000 to $250,000. To put that in perspective, the median home price in Jacksonville is about $280,000 right now. So we're right in that below middle income neighborhood where you're going to find the best overall return from your 5 profit centers. So we're very excited to be right there. Typical properties will rent for somewhere between about $1,300 to maybe about $1,600. And then you've got that long-term resident in place with you and positive cash flow from day one.
Well, you're a real influencer there in the community, being at vertically integrated company, not only a provider. Gregg, if someone wants to learn more about you or even get started with getting some of your inventory in their portfolio, what's the best way for them to do that?
Well, they can go to the website that we have. The website is cashflowandgrowth.com, cashflowandgrowth.com. You can also reach out and just give my team a call at 904-677-6777. And you can find us on Facebook. I'm really active there in our group. And you can find us at jwbfacebookgroup.com.
Gregg, you're really doing exceptional things there in Jacksonville. Thanks so much for coming back onto the show.
Thanks so much, Keith.
Doesn't every community wish that they had a Gregg Cohen in it? He would make your hometown a better place to live. Gregg is a long-term view kind of guy, much like me, and real estate is a long game. And hey, I expect that you're going to be alive for the long term, so I like everything about going long. These days, what might be as remarkable as shipping container apartment building construction is actually having available inventory of the more conventional cast-in-place concrete and wood frame homes that we're all used to and in a high-demand area like Florida. Gregg has been on the show with me a number of times, stretching over perhaps 5 years now, and I know that so many of you listeners have gotten started with turnkey property there, and then I see that you buy more perhaps 2 years after you acquired your first few, so I really imagine that you like dealing with them. Next week here on the show, our own Andrea will be back here with me. She runs operations here. She's an avid real estate investor herself. Also, I'm going to tell you the two things that I personally invested in recently. One of them you would totally expect. The other one you totally wouldn't. I'll tell you what those are. That's next week. This week we had part 2 of 3 in the housing supply crisis series. In 2 weeks, we'll talk about 3D printed homes. As for today, yes, available cash flowing income property is somewhat of a novel concept. It exists with Gregg in Jacksonville. If that sounds interesting to you, get started at cashflowandgrowth.com. Until next week, when I'll be back to help you build your wealth, I'm Keith Weinhold. Don't quit your daydream.
Nothing on this show should be considered specific, personal, or professional advice. Please consult an appropriate tax, legal, real estate, financial, or business professional for individualized advice. Opinions of guests are their own. Information is not guaranteed. All investment strategies have the potential for profit or loss. The host is operating on behalf of Get Rich Education, LLC exclusively.
The preceding program was brought to you by your home for wealth building, GetRichEducation.com.